Hey everyone, this is part 4 of my Lee and Kirby Fantastic Four coverage. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down issues 31 through 40, plus the annual number 2 of the Fantastic Four. So a tease of some of the storylines in this volume are the annual number 2, which has Doctor Doom's origin, which is pretty exciting. That's going to be fleshed out. And then we're going to have a pretty good confrontation between Doom and the Fantastic Four. Then the Mole Man's going to be coming back into the story. We are also going to be introduced to Sue and Johnny's father, Franklin Storm, and he's going to have some big moments in this volume. Namor has now returned back into the good graces of the Atlanteans, and there's going to be an Atlantean civil war where someone challenges Namor for his throne, and the Fantastic Four have to help him. It's a great issue. Really good stuff. We're also going to see Reed Richards propose to Sue Storm, and the two of them finally getting engaged. So that's exciting. That's exciting. Good for them. We're going to be introduced to a villain group called the Frightful Four, and they are actually going to be a pretty big threat to the Fantastic Four. We're going to go to the Skrull homeworld, and I think this is probably the best issue involving the Skrulls yet in the Fantastic Four. Really high on that issue. It is very good. The Frightful Four are going to come back again, fight the Fantastic Four some more, with some pretty big consequences after the end of their second interaction. And then we're going to end this volume with the Fantastic Four teaming up with Daredevil to take on Doctor Doom, who has now taken over the Baxter building. So Doom is in the Baxter building. He's hitting the Fantastic Four with all of Reed Richards' various gadgets. And it's pretty exciting. All right, let's dive into it. Fantastic Four, Volume 4. Fantastic Four, Marvel Masterworks, Volume 4, written by Stan Lee, art by Jack Kirby. This volume covers issues 31 through 40 and the annual issue 2. We begin with the Fantastic Four Annual number 2 from 1964. The storylines are the origin of Doctor Doom and the final victory of Doctor Doom. On a dark and windy night, Doctor Doom's servant, Boris, comes to greet Doom. Doom is sitting atop his throne in the kingdom of Latveria. Boris leads Doom to a gravesite which stirs in Doom memories of his past. We see a flashback now to when little Victor Von Doom was just a child. Victor's mother was dead, but he was being raised by his father, Werner Von Doom, who was a healer in the gypsy camp. Werner was demanded by a local baron to come to his home and attempt to save the life of his ailing wife. Werner tried his best, but the woman eventually died anyway. And the baron sent out his troops to collect Werner and punish him for this. But Werner, he managed to flee with his son, Victor. However, their travels exposed them to various harsh conditions. Cold, rain, snow. Werner and Victor did escape, but Werner died of the exposure to the elements. And Victor grew up in Boris's care. Little Victor, after his father died, swore as a child, "They murdered my mother when I was but an infant, and now they have slain my father. They'll pay for that. All of mankind shall pay." Boris, he thought to himself, we never told him that his mother was a mystic sorceress, and her blood runs in his own veins. I pray he never learns of his dark heritage. Victor one day did learn of those dark secrets, though. He learned that his mother was a witch, and she had magic potions and strange scientific secrets. And he wanted to learn those secrets for himself. As Victor grew up, he studied science and magic. He started bedeviling the local aristocracy with his swindles. For example, he sold one lord a fiddle, a so-called magic fiddle that the lord could play even though he did not know how. But once Victor left and pocketed the money, it turned out that the fiddle was just somehow scientifically playing by itself, and Victor could turn that off remotely. Another aristocrat was sold some sort of salve to cure his headache, but then it rotted out his hair. A so-called gold statue that was sold to another man turned into mud. Eventually, a young Victor Von Doom was captured, and he was put to death by firing squad. Although when the firing squad shot and supposedly killed Victor, it was revealed that Victor just replaced himself with a robot, something Dr. Doom would do very frequently in the future with his Doom bots. Well, this was the first. Eventually, Victor's scientific aptitude attracted the attention of a university recruiter who offered Victor a scholarship to come to America and learn. Once studying in America at a university, Victor met Reed Richards as well as Ben Grimm. At university, Victor continued various dangerous and illegal experiments. One of his so-called experiments, Reed Richards happened to read over Victor's notes. Reed tried to warn Victor, saying, "Hey, there you are, fella. You better double-check some of these equations. You're off by a few decimals in some places, and that could be dangerous." But Victor dismissed Reed Richards, saying, "Give me that. Now get out. Do you hear me? Get out." If Victor wasn't so stubborn and he listened to Reed, he would not have suffered what was to happen next. Victor conducted his experiment, and it blew up in his face with an explosion. Dr. Doom was kicked out of the university. He didn't care though. He said, "Bah, there's nothing more you can teach me anyway." But Victor's face was horribly scarred in this explosion. When Victor saw himself in the mirror, he said, No, I'm ugly. What have I done to myself? What have I done? My face is too horrible. No other eyes must ever gaze upon it. I'll hide from the sight of mankind, somewhere, somehow. Victor, he left America and took himself to the remote vastness of Tibet, seeking forbidden secrets of black magic and sorcery. He was taken in by a mysterious order of monks who dwelled in a lost mountain. He stayed there for months, learning their ancient secrets, until one day they addressed him as their master. And it is there that Doom forged his costume of metal, as well as his iconic mask. The monks created the mask and they placed it on Doom's face. Doom, once he wore it, said, "Never again will mortal eyes gaze upon the hideousness of Victor Von Doom. From this moment on, there is no Victor Von Doom. He has vanished, along with the handsome face he once possessed. But in his place, there shall be another, wiser, stronger, more brilliant, more powerful than ever before. From this moment on, I shall be known as Dr. Doom." Dr. Doom was then given some sort of special ring, which only he can control, which will take off his mask. Doom explains, "Only I have the power to remove my mask, by manipulating the many-faceted ring upon my finger." Doom's ring was then covered with special herbs, camouflaging it so completely that none will see it. Doom then also created himself a nuclear-powered flying harness, and now with the power of flight, he returned home to Latveria, where he quickly became the country's ruler. Although, to the world, Latveria is still run by a so-called Prime Minister, although secretly it is ruled by Doom. And others in the country do not refer to Doom as King or Emperor, they simply call him Master. We now continue on with the second storyline in this annual, called The Final Victory of Dr. Doom. Okay, so the last we saw Dr. Doom, other than the brief origin we just had, was way back in issue 23. At the end of that issue, Dr. Doom had a convoluted plan to trap the FF in space through this teleportation room or something, but Dr. Doom got defeated and he ended up getting launched out to space himself. And it's funny because that is actually the second time that Doom has been floating out into space. But how did Dr. Doom make it back to safety this time? So we see Dr. Doom, he is floating out there in space. And luckily, Rama Tut, aka Kang the Conqueror, whom we first met in Fantastic Four issue 19, he was flying out there in space with his ship/time travel machine, and he stumbled upon Dr. Doom and brought Doom into his ship, which is eerily similar to the first time that Dr. Doom got saved when he was flying out there in space, where he got saved by this random race of aliens called the Ovoids. But anyway, Kang is very interested in speaking with Doom. The two of them discuss and share some of their histories. And Kang, he can't believe it when he hears Doom's story. He says, "It cannot possibly be blind chance that we have met. It must be part of some grand design, some master plan of fate. For I too have good reason to hate the Fantastic Four. I too have been defeated by them. I have committed many crimes in many centuries using this time machine which I stole, which was supposed to have been invented by my ancestor, Dr. Doom." Doom, hearing this, says, "Wait, it was I who built the time machine? What if I am not your ancestor? What if I myself went to the future? What if you are me? What if Ramatut and Dr. Doom are the same man?" Ramatut, or Kang, replies, "You mean you yourself might have traveled to the 25th century and taken my name, and you might actually be me?" Doom, he replies, "Or perhaps during one of your trips to the past, you became the gypsy who became Dr. Doom. We could be the same man living in two different ages. But if we're both the same man, how can we coexist at the same moment in eternity?" The two of them discuss the scientific principles of the theories they are talking about. Are they actually the same man? Either way, Doom suggests that they do not attack the Fantastic Four together, for if they are the same man, and if either of them are slain, then the other two will perish. Ramatut thinks Doom is right. He says, "We cannot take the risk. Therefore, I shall bring you back to Earth while I return to the future, so that I shall still live to carry on your fight, even though you may be destroyed." So Doom gets returned to Earth, and Ramatut / Kang the Conqueror returns to the future. As the days pass, Doom decides to put together his plans to finally get rid of the Fantastic Four. Doom goes to the Latverian embassy in New York, and he instructs the leader of that embassy to throw a gala with the Fantastic Four as the guests of honor. It is then where he plans to put in his sinister plans into action. So the Fantastic Four, in the mail, they get their invite to a reception at the Latverian embassy. They are to be given a scientific fellowship award. The Fantastic Four decide to accept this so-called prestigious honor, and they arrive at the Latverian embassy for the event. The FF all sit around a fancy dining table with a whole bunch of Latverian dignitaries. They are all then poured a native juice of Latveria, made from special berries. Johnny, the Thing, and Sue all drink this special drink, but not Reed Richards, as he is suspicious of it. And sure enough, Reed Richards' suspicions were correct, as throughout the night, the Fantastic Four members that did drink the berry drink start imagining things. Johnny Storm imagines the Thing attacking him and then running away. So Johnny, he then goes and starts attacking the real Thing, who was just sitting there quietly the whole night. Sue Storm, she sees Reed Richards supposedly kissing another woman. She questions Reed, "I thought you loved me." Reed, he responds, "Love you, ha 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 ha. You're lucky I even tolerate you. I believe in playing the field, Blondie, and don't you forget it." Sue then runs off, crying. The Fantastic Four all start fighting each other as Doom watches on from the distance. Doom, he retreats to a room in the embassy as he sees his plan is slowly working. But then Doom gets a little depressed. He says to himself, "And so my final and complete victory is almost within my grasp, but what does it mean? Will I be any happier once I've defeated the Fantastic Four? No victory, no triumph can ever restore my normal face to me. No conquest can make me the man I once was." Dr. Doom, using his special ring, removes his mask, and he looks in the mirror, and he does not like what he sees. He says, "No, it's worse than I remembered. I can't bear it. I must destroy it, drive it from my sight, from my mind." And Doom, using a gun, he shoots the mirror. The Fantastic Four, who were fighting in a room nearby, overhear this, and they go to check out the room, and they see Doom there. Doom manages to retreat out the window and escape. Reed Richards figured Doom was somehow behind these events this night, and he tells the others of the supposed poisoned drink and how it was messing with their imaginations. Reed says to Sue, "I tried to explain it, darling. It was the drink they gave us. It contained a potent herb. It made us imagine the worst about each other. That's why you thought you saw me with that other girl. It's what Doom wanted you to think. It was Doom's way of toying with us, of setting us up for the kill. Sue responds, "Oh, Reed, dearest, I've been such a fool." Reed Richards responds with the most sexist line ever. Reed, he says, "Not a fool, Sue, merely a female. You couldn't have reacted differently. But we haven't time to talk, not with Dr. Doom on the loose." Reed gathers the other Fantastic Four members and they retreat back to their headquarters, only to find Doom waiting for them there, and he is protected by a special force field. The Thing tries to punch Doom, but it is no use. Luckily though, Reed Richards apparently created a device for just such an occasion. The device is called a force field disruptor, and it requires Johnny Storm to power it up. So Reed gives Johnny Storm an end of the device. Johnny flies high up into the sky above New York City. Johnny then blasts his Nova Flame, creating an explosion of light in the sky that is seen for miles around. The energy created by that blast is fed into the force field disruptor, and it disrupts the force field around Doom, breaking it. The Fantastic Four then all try to battle Doom now that the force field is gone. Sue Storm tries some of her invisible tricks on Doom, but Doom seems to be countering them. That is when Reed Richards steps in front of Sue and tells Doom, "Why battle a female, Doom, when I'm as yet undefeated?" Doom to this then says, "My sentiments exactly, Richards." That's pretty sexist too, am I right? Alright, Reed continues, "Your fight is with me alone. It always has been, since we first met those long years ago." Doom, he vows to defeat Reed now. Before they do their final battle though, Reed, he goes over to the bar and pours a drink from them both. He says, "Then this will be our final battle to the finish. Let's drink to it." Doom replies, "It is agreed then. Only one of us will leave here alive." They both pound the drinks down. Reed, he then pulls out a weird-ass device called an encephalogun. Both of them put their fingers on the trigger of the gun, and a weird device is also touching their heads, pointing to the gun. Reed says that this machine will prove once and for all which of them is superior. The one of them that has the greater mentality will send the other to a timeless limbo from which there is no return. So both Doom and Reed Richards begin using this device against each other. Their duel commences, their two brains against each other. Eventually though, it seems like Doom wins this duel, and Reed Richards, he disappears and fades away. Doom, he says, "I've won! He's gone! He's been hurled into limbo! I am the victor, as I knew I was destined to be." Doom then turns to the other FF members and says, "You saw it! You all saw it! Now you can never again doubt my superiority, my matchless mental power. Now you know it is I who am truly the master. I have no interest in any of you. You have suffered the loss of your leader. That is enough. In my moment of supreme triumph, I can afford to be forgiving, and so I leave you for the last time." Doom, he then departs and heads back to Latveria, where he will rule. But Reed Richards is actually still there and is perfectly fine. Reed explains to the other FF members, "We drank the same berry juice his underlings gave us, the juice which enabled the one with the stronger mentality to create an illusion in the brain of the other. And the illusion I created in his mind was the illusion of victory. He is convinced that he defeated me." Johnny and the Thing are worried that, how long will this illusion last? They should take Doom down now. Reed answers, "No, it would serve no purpose. We're not murderers. And we can't kill him. And he's committed no crime for which he can be arrested. As a head of a foreign nation, no matter how small, he is entitled to diplomatic immunity in this country. All we can do is hope that he never returns, but if he does, we must stand ready to battle him again." Fantastic Four issue 31, The Mad Menace of the Macabre Mole Man. An earthquake has hit New York City. The Fantastic Four in the Baxter building are rocked. They wonder what could have caused such a thing. While most of them are distracted with that, Sue Storm is distracted by something else. In the newspaper, she reads about her father. Dr. Franklin Storm and how he has escaped prison, although Sue hides this fact from the others. Sue is too distracted to partake in today's investigations, but Reed, Johnny, and the Thing go to check out the source of this earthquake in New York. And they soon discover an entire neighborhood in New York has been taken. It's missing. The Thing, he quips, "A whole blamed city block is missing. Too bad it ain't Yancey Street." While Reed, Johnny, and the Thing are busy with that, Sue decides to go to the nearby police headquarters to check in on the news of her father. While she is there though, we see the Mole Man is the one secretly responsible for these earthquakes and this stealing of city blocks. The Mole Man decides he wants Sue as a hostage, so using his weird machines, he manages to steal the entire city block where the police headquarters is, where Sue Storm also was. Moments later, we see that the Mole Man appears to have teleported the New York City blocks to an underground lair. There he has all the many New Yorkers pile out of their city, and then he sees Sue and he takes her hostage. The Mole Man believes now he can conquer the surface world with his machines that they cannot even comprehend, and now that he has Sue hostage, the soft-hearted Fantastic Four will not dare attack him. Mole Man sends a video message to Reed, Ben, and Johnny showing that he has Sue hostage. The three of them immediately rush out to try and find him. They pilot their plane to where one of those missing city blocks are. They try to keep flying down and down into the ground until they can eventually arrive at Mole Man's underground base. They navigate past various traps and eventually they arrive at the missing city blocks that are now beneath the earth. There they are confronted by the Mole Man and Sue. Reed asks the Mole Man what he's after. The Mole Man answers, "The same thing I've ever been after, conquest of the surface world, but this time I have a means of guaranteeing that you will not interfere with my plan. I shall keep Sue captive. You shall return to the surface, and you must obey me. You have no choice." Reed, he does not want to risk harming Sue's life, so he will back down. He warns the Mole Man though, "We're not the only ones that will oppose you." Mole Man to this says, "I'm aware of that, but if you value her life, you will do all in your power to prevent others from defying me." Reed, the Thing, and Johnny return to the surface, and there the Avengers wait for them, as the Avengers too are troubled by the missing New York City blocks. They begin to try and rush down into the ground to fight off the Mole Man, but Reed stops them. He explains that the Mole Man has Sue hostage and he doesn't want her harmed. Thor, he argues with Reed, saying, "But the lives of the many may be at stake if he isn't stopped." Reed understands this, but he wants to try to handle things his way first. Thor says the Avengers will allow this. Reed has a period of 24 hours to try and do things his way. Reed, with the help of Tony Stark supplying various technology, builds some sort of highly sensitive transistorized detector machine. With this ridiculous machine, he can pinpoint Sue Storm's exact location under the ground. Currently, Sue is being held captive in some sort of rock crystal cage. Reed, he pinpoints Sue's location, and him, Thing, and Johnny dig their way downwards. They find Sue, free her, fight off the Mole Man's various subterraneans. They somehow reverse whatever machine stole the New York City blocks, and it returns those city blocks to their original location. The Mole Man manages to retreat, and the Fantastic Four return back to the surface, and as they travel back up to the surface, some sort of chain reaction is set off, various explosions go, sealing up the ground forever once again. Once the Fantastic Four reach the surface of the Earth, it seems like it is a job well done and a mission accomplished, but Sue Storm got hit by a piece of flying shrapnel as they were escaping, and she is critically injured. They take Sue to the hospital. There, Reed Richards is talking to a doctor. He asks if there's anything that can be done. Sue needs an operation, but it is a very difficult operation, and the doctor says no man on staff would attempt the operation required. Reed replies, "But there must be someone who can save her." The doctor answers, There's only one man who's ever successfully performed such an operation. Reed tells the doctor, well then get him! No matter what the cost, no matter where he is, get him! The doctor, and this is ridiculous, the doctor says, I wish I could. He stopped practicing medicine years ago. I don't know where he is. Reed, distraught, says, then there's no hope for Sue? I can't give up. Tell me the doctor's name. Perhaps we can find him. The doctor replies, it's useless, Richards. This man has been in prison. In fact, he escaped only recently. He's not likely to give himself up just to save another. But then, just at that moment, in the most dramatic way possible, that doctor arrives then and there, and it is Dr. Franklin Storm, Sue's dad. He just escaped from the prison. Sue was reading about it in the newspaper earlier that day. Johnny, seeing his father there, says, you! But all these years, Sue told me you were dead. Franklin replies, I wanted you to think I was dead, son. I'd caused enough sorrow to your poor mother. I didn't want to hurt my children also. Anyway, even though Franklin Richards just escaped from prison and is a convict, the other doctor immediately begins to prep Sue for surgery for Franklin to perform. Because apparently, no other doctors are capable of treating flying shrapnel hitting someone in the head, except for Franklin. Franklin, he performs the surgery and Sue is cured. She is going to be fine. And then afterwards, the authorities quickly come to arrest Franklin once again. Fantastic Four issue 32, Death of a Hero. In this issue, the secret villain is actually the Skrulls once again. Specifically, the Super Skrull. The last we saw him was in issue 18, where he was trapped inside a volcano. Well, eventually the Super Skrull was freed by some Skrulls from his home planet. And now the Skrulls are going to attempt to strike the Earth again. The Super Skrull visits Franklin Storm in his prison cell. The Super Skrull studies Franklin and then shapeshifts his body to look like him. The Skrulls then teleport Franklin Storm back to their home planet. So now the Super Skrull is pretending to be Franklin Storm. Now before we continue on with the story, let's do a little flashback to how Franklin Storm wound up in jail. So one day while Franklin was driving himself and his wife Mary to a dinner being held in his honor, one of the tires on the car suffered a blowout. As a result, the car swerved off the road and crashed, and Mary suffered a fatal injury. Unscathed himself, Franklin attempted to operate on Mary in a desperate attempt to save her life, but he failed, and Mary died. Franklin Storm blamed himself for her death. He gave up his medical career, and he turned to drinking and excessive gambling. And eventually he had to borrow money from some underworld loan sharks to pay off his debts. Unable to repay his loans, a criminal in the employ of the loan sharks confronted Franklin and threatened to kill him and his children. Franklin grappled with the criminal, and during the fight, the criminal accidentally shot himself and died. Franklin was charged with manslaughter, and still tormented by the guilt over Mary's death. He refused to say anything in his defense during his trial. So, Franklin was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. Wishing to spare his children further distress, Franklin asked Sue to not visit him while in prison and to tell Johnny that he was dead. Alright, back to the current day now. Johnny and Sue, now having been kind of rekindled with their father, go to visit him in prison. Although, of course, their dad is now this Super Skrull in disguise. Sue explains to her dad that they're working on his parole and maybe they can get him out. But Franklin stands up and says, that will not be necessary. Sue questions, what do you mean? Franklin, secretly the Super Skrull, says, I shall show you what I mean. Prepare yourselves for the surprise of your life. During my years here, I have worked in the prison laboratory. Nobody ever suspected that I was making myself invincible. So Franklin, secretly the Super Skrull, breaks out of prison, and then he has all sorts of crazy powers, and he dubs himself a new villain called the Invincible Man, and he causes all sorts of havoc around the world. The Fantastic Four try to take him down, but they cannot, as the Super Skrull is very powerful. Of course, they still think right now he is this villain called the Invincible Man. And the press start to think negatively of the Fantastic Four because they're battling Sue's father and perhaps the FF is going easy on him. But eventually Reed Richards gets to the bottom of it and figures out that Franklin Storm here is actually the Super Skrull and not who he says he is. Reed says to the Skrull, "You thought you could discredit us, make us not fight you by posing as Dr. Storm, didn't you?" The Skrull then changes shape back to his normal form, saying, "Yes, but now there is no more need for disguise. Now I can be myself again. I can dissolve this accursed human guise." The Super Skrull then retreats. Sue questions, "But what about my father?" Reed explains, "Don't worry, dear. They're going to return him to Earth to trade him for the Super Skrull. See, they've started the prisoner exchange." Sue questions further, "But Reed, what if they don't return Dad? What if they break their word?" Reed to this says, "They wouldn't dare. I've zeroed this atomic space displacer right on their home planet, using their own power beam as a direction finder, and they know it." Johnny questions, "You mean you could bombard them with nuclear power if they double-crossed us?" Reed answers, "Something like that, Johnny. The mechanics are difficult to explain." Soon enough, the Super Skrull is transported back to his home galaxy, and Franklin Storm is transported back to Earth via the same incredible Skrull transport ray. So Franklin Storm, the real one, appears now before the Fantastic Four. Johnny, Sue, and the Thing are pleased. They think the worst is now over. But Reed, he's still skeptical. He says, "Don't be too sure. The Skrulls are an unhuman, merciless race. They're capable of anything. The threat of nuclear destruction of their planet will make them return your father, but we must still be wary of any trick, any deadly deception." So Franklin Storm appears before them. He begins to look at the Fantastic Four, but then he warns them, "No! Go back! Stay away from me!" It turns out the Skrulls, before sending Franklin back, placed some sort of concussive energy beam projector and strapped it to his chest. And the projector was set to fire as soon as Franklin saw the Fantastic Four. That is why when Franklin saw them, he immediately rolled away and he faced the ground, so that the deadly projection blast would just blast at the floor. As a result of doing this, though, Franklin took the brunt of the force of the blast himself and became mortally injured. Reed, somehow deducing all this, says, "Just as I feared, the Skrulls made him a living booby trap. They strapped some sort of high-impact explosive beam to his chest. If he had merely looked at us, we'd have received the full deadly charge and he'd have survived. But he rolled over, facing the floor, so that he would take the full force of the beam rather than us. We owe him our lives." Franklin Storm now dying, he says to Sue and Johnny, "I was foolish, weak. I let a tragedy of life defeat me years ago. I didn't have the courage to carry on as I should have, for you. But now, somehow, I found my courage, so perhaps I've made up for the years I'd wasted. That's why you must not cry. At last, I regained my pride. Think of me kindly, my children. Always remember I loved you. Never forget how proud you made me with your honor, your valor, your selfless love. My life has been lovely all these years, but now I'll be lonely no more. Do you hear me? I'll be lonely no more, for I'm going to join my beloved Mary." And with that, Franklin dies. The authorities soon arrive and Reed Richards explains the situation to them. Reed explains to the cops that the late Dr. Franklin Storm was one of the finest, bravest men he's ever had the honor of knowing. He'll give the police a full account later on, but for now, let us say that he died a hero. Fantastic Four issue 33, side by side with the Submariner. The Fantastic Four get visited by Namor's undersea love interest, Dorma. We see that Dorma is an Atlantean. She has blue skin, and she has some sort of artificial device she uses to breathe outside of the water. Dorma requires the aid of the Fantastic Four as Namor is in trouble. She then explains the situation. So, last we saw Namor, he was at odds with his Atlantean people, but apparently he is back in with their good graces, and they now see him as their leader once again. Personally, I wish they explored that dynamic of Namor being on the outs with his people a little longer, but whatever. Namor's in charge once again of the Atlanteans. But Namor has someone that is challenging him for the throne of Atlantis. A brute of an Atlantean named Attuma. Attuma attacked Namor's Atlantean forces with forces of his own, and it led to a big undersea battle. Namor and his Atlanteans were holding their own, but then Namor scorned Dorma. Dorma told Namor one day, "My lord, do not expose yourself to their arms this way. If anything should happen to you, my heart would..." And Namor cut her off and replied, "Hold your tongue, woman. Never speak thus of love to me." Because of this, Dorma betrayed Namor, and using her authority as a noblewoman of the realm, she ordered the guard away from a vital outpost, allowing Attuma's horde to crash through. Right now, Namor is still continuing to fend off Attuma, but Dorma worries he will not be able to hold out much longer. That is why she wants the Fantastic Four's help. Johnny Storm questions, "But Namor's our sworn enemy. Why would we want to help him?" Dorma explains, "If Attuma triumphs, nothing will stop him. He'll attack your surface world next." So the Fantastic Four decide that they are going to assist Namor in his battle with this Attuma. Reed Richards, he developed a new scientific thing called an oxo spray. The Fantastic Four will spray it on their skin, and it will allow them to breathe underwater for several hours at a time. Alright, the Fantastic Four are ready to go into the ocean and do some undersea battling. They head in their submarine and begin submerging, and we see some of Kirby's very trippy underwater-esque pages. Once the Fantastic Four arrive at the battle, they begin helping defeat Attuma's forces. The Thing at one point catches a catapult boulder and chucks it back. Thanks to this oxo spray, Johnny Storm was even capable of flaming on underwater, but only for like a little bit at a time. He uses this to create lots of steam, blocking Attuma's forces' view. Reed Richards stretches his body into a kind of jellyfish to pilot the others deeper. Meanwhile, elsewhere at the heart of the battle, Namor and his forces manage to fight their way through up to Attuma. And Namor, he challenges Attuma to a hand-to-hand duel as a means of settling their squabble. Attuma accepts, and the duel is about to take place. But Attuma and his forces plan on cheating, planning various traps. They plan to shoot Namor with a subsonic sound wave, which would drain him of his strength. Luckily though, Sue Storm blocks this from happening. We see that Namor and this Attuma are continuing their dueling. Namor has no idea that the Fantastic Four are helping him and blocking Attuma's various traps. Next, Attuma's forces attempt to shoot Namor with something called an ionic ray. The Thing destroys that machine though. Next, they're going to shoot Namor with some sort of unbreakable titanium wire. But Reed Richards gets involved, and somehow Attuma's forces end up getting caught in the wire themselves. As a last resort, Attuma's final trap is a disintegrator ray that is hidden in his helmet. Sue Storm, though, happens to be nearby, and she makes Namor temporarily invisible, so Attuma will miss the blasts when he fires the disintegrator rays. It is now at this point that the Fantastic Four's oxo spray is starting to wear off, and they will no longer be able to breathe underwater much longer, so they all retreat back up to the surface. But luckily they did enough. Namor, he finally wins the battle with Attuma. He victoriously says, "Fool, it is to Namor, the avenging sun, you speak. Namor, prince of the blood, sovereign of the seven seas. To rule is my heritage. No barbarian shall wrest from me my crown and scepter. Attuma he surrenders, saying, "Enough, spare me! The battle is ended, I can endure no more." Namor to this says, "You are not fit to be king. A true sovereign prefers death to surrender." Namor then orders his troops, saying, "Carry this cringing coward beyond the proud gates of Atlantis. He and all who dared serve him are banished forever from the Golden Realm." Afterwards, once Namor has won, Dorma is there to comfort him, and Namor forgives her, saying, "I know how you betrayed me, Lady Dorma, but I forgive you, for I, above all others, am aware of the strange things one may do in the name of love. I must rest now, for my limbs are weary and my spirits weak. I pray no enemy such as the Fantastic Four attacks us now, for surely they would prevail." Dorma looks on, thinking to herself, "My love is still unaware of how he has been helped. Knowing his great pride, it is best he remain so." And up on the ocean surface, we see the Fantastic Four floating, slowly going back home. Fantastic Four issue 34, A House Divided. In this issue, the Fantastic Four face their greatest threat, a rich, bald billionaire guy. And no, it's not Jeff Bezos. This was written in the 60s, remember? It is a guy named Gregory Gideon. Before we get to him, though, I think there's a funny little scene here between Johnny and the Thing. The Yancey Street gang has, for some reason, sent the Thing a Beatles wig. The Thing questions, "A Beatle wig? What am I gonna do with that?" Johnny jokes, "You could wear it backwards and let it cover your face. It'll be an improvement." This really pisses the Thing off, and he begins fighting Johnny, and the two of them really go at it. But eventually Johnny flies out a window and goes away. Before he leaves though, he says, "Hey Ben, I didn't mean it when I said that wig would be an improvement. Nothing can improve that pan." As Johnny flies away, Reed and Sue tell Thing that, sometimes he gets a little carried away with his horseplay with Johnny. He was scaring poor Alicia. Alicia says, "It's alright, Reed. I think I'm beginning to get used to Ben's temper tantrums now." The Thing to this says, "What temper tantrums? I'm the sweetest, most lovable guy on the team, and I'll pulverize any meathead who says I ain't. But I guess I shouldn't have blown my stack, baby. But when I think of those Yancey crumbums, I see red. Imagine those creeps sending me a Beetle wig." Alicia asks the Thing, "Well, why don't you just throw it away?" The Thing answers, "You kidding? I always wanted to try one on." So the Thing, now wearing the Beatles wig, says to Alicia, "I wish you could see me, baby. I'm a living doll." We now jump over to the rich, bald billionaire Gregory Gideon, one of the wealthiest, most influential men on the planet. He values money over everything, even ignoring his own wife and son. When the scene opens on Gregory, he's talking to a bank, and he tells the bank, "Gideon talking, and my answer is no. I will not lend your bank any more money." Others in the room are whispering, "I keep hearing rumors that Gideon is trying to take over control of the entire planet. Insane as it may sound, if anyone can do it, Gideon can." Gideon is then on a conference call talking to the 3 remaining financial companies he doesn't own that would fulfill and finish his empire. He tells the 3 men on the call that he wishes to buy them out. He says he's going to drive them out of business in 3 years. But that's too slow. He doesn't even have the patience to wait. He wants to own everything, and he wants to own it now. So instead, he offers the 3 men a challenge. If they give him a task, any task, which they consider impossible, if he accomplishes it in 1 week, they are to sell out now. And if he fails, he will give up his plan for world domination. And the 3 other business aristocrats on the phone, they give their task to Gideon. They want him to defeat the Fantastic Four in 1 week. Gideon agrees to their demands. Now remember, Gideon's only power is that he has a shitload of money. He's not really your kind of typical villain. He's just a rich guy. So Gideon puts his plan into actions, throwing around millions of dollars and hiring people to do all sorts of things. He manages to trick the Thing into thinking that Reed Richards was a Skrull, and he makes Johnny Storm think that his sister Sue is under control of the Puppet Master. So now the Fantastic Four begin fighting amongst themselves. In the meanwhile, we see some of Gideon's interactions with his wife and son. Gideon's wife asks him, "Gregory dear, are you ready for dinner?" And Gregory answers, "Haven't I told you never to interrupt me when I'm talking business? When will you learn to know your place?" And Gideon's little son, Timothy, runs over to him, saying, "Oh Dad, you're home, you're home." Timothy expresses how he misses his dad and he's busy so much, but Gideon tells his boy, "I know, son, but I'm not like other men. Someday you'll realize that when I give you the entire planet for a plaything." Timothy's son says, "But I don't want any old planet, I just want you." Gideon, getting uncomfortable with his son's love, thinks to himself, "I've gotta change the subject. What magazine are you reading there, Thomas?" Thomas answers, "The Fantastic Four, they're my favorite heroes." Gideon then thinks maniacally in his head, "But not for long, son, not for long." Later on, Gideon is talking to some of his associates, planning the final part of his plan to destroy the Fantastic Four. And Gideon's son, Timothy, overhears this, and he is not happy. He wishes to stop his father's plans. Gideon sees his boy running away, and he eventually becomes a little concerned. How much did the boy overhear? Did he upset the boy? Gideon's heart almost begins to grow like the Grinch. But nevertheless, he still must do the final part of his plan. Gideon has taken some inspiration from Dr. Doom's time machine platform, and for the cost of $30 million, which is about the equivalent of $307 million in today's dollars, Gideon has rebuilt the time platform, and he has set the trap for the Fantastic Four to come here, where he will send them and strand them in the past. The only problem is Thomas, the boy, was running around. He was trying to warn the Fantastic Four, and he inadvertently ended up walking into the time machine trap first. And the trap was triggered, and it started to send him back in time. And the Thing heroically tried to protect the boy, but he ended up getting sent back as well. Luckily, though, there was a failsafe. Reed Richards managed to shut off the lab's power, and the time machine, due to its accidental recoil, brought the Thing and Timothy back to the present day. The billionaire Gideon was distraught when he thought he lost his son. He said to himself, I must have been mad. I realize now that the prize doesn't matter. Nothing matters if I've lost my boy." But when Timothy is brought back, Gideon rushes over to his son and embraces him, and he says, "I was too blind to see that I already had the whole world. I had my son, my wife, the only two things that really matter. But when my vanity, my stupid greed, made me want more and more, until now I've lost everything." Gideon, now wanting to make amends for his bad deeds, says, "I renounce my fortune. I abdicate my financial empire. All my worldwide holdings, all my incalculable wealth shall be given to charity. Money means nothing to me anymore. I thank heaven for opening my eyes before it was too late. I still possess my greatest treasures here in my arms, and I'll devote the rest of my life to making amends for the way I've neglected them." Gideon is now with his wife and son as he says this. Gideon leaves with his family, but he tells the Fantastic Four, "I have nothing more to say. You may tell the police I shall be waiting for them at my home with my family." And thus this ends the threat of Gregory Gideon, the world's richest man. Fantastic Four issue 35, Calamity on Campus. In this issue, the villain Diablo will be coming back into the story. And once again, this issue has a lot of problems. Stan Lee is really bad at writing this Diablo character. In fact, I found an interview where Stan said this: "I couldn't think of anything to do with Diablo. I don't even remember what the story was now, but I know I hated it. Diablo was the one character I felt I had totally and completely failed. If anybody mentions Diablo, I have absolutely no remembrance. I don't know who he was. or where he came from, or what he was trying to do, or why he was trying to do it, and I couldn't care less. It was a character I made up, and I was totally uninterested in him, and I think that is when the character, villain, or hero fails. So alright, with that background information now, let's dive into the issue. The Fantastic Four arrive at State U University. Reed Richards is here to give a lecture. While the Fantastic Four are here, they meet some interesting characters, such as Professor X of the X-Men, along with Cyclops. They are here to interview some students to see if they would be right for Xavier's school, secretly wanting to find more mutants. Reed and Xavier exchange pleasantries. The Fantastic Four meet a scientist, a Mr. Gregson Gilbert, who is creating a powerful synthetic life form called Dragon Man. Dragon Man is supposedly more powerful than the Fantastic Four combined, although Gregson is not sure how to bring it to life. The Fantastic Four also run into Peter Parker, who is secretly Spider-Man. Peter is still currently in high school, but he is contemplating going to State U next year for university. Peter and Johnny Storm exchange some words. The two of them are rivals, and they both wonder if they will be going to the same school next year. Meanwhile, over in Transylvania, we go to Diablo. Last we saw him, he was trapped underground in his crypt. Well, apparently with the chemicals he had access to, he was able to break free. And now that Diablo is free, he wants to get revenge on the Fantastic Four. Now the problem is Diablo is in Transylvania and the Fantastic Four are in America. So somehow Diablo, with his chemical alchemy powers, somehow inexplicitly manages to teleport himself to America. Yeah. Now that he is in America, we see Diablo driving a car, somehow knowing that the Fantastic Four are at this State U University. I don't know how he would know that. And also, Diablo has been stuck in a crypt for over 100 years, so he's not really familiar with modern technology such as cars, yet he is comfortably driving this car like it is common knowledge to him. In fact, he's driving it very fast. He arrives at State U University and finds the scientist Dr. Gregson Gilbert. How did Diablo know of Dr. Gregson and his work? It doesn't make sense. But nevertheless, Diablo helps Dr. Gregson, and with his alchemy chemical powers, manages to throw some chemicals onto this Dragon Man and give him life. So now that Dragon Man is alive, Diablo orders Dragon Man to kill the Fantastic Four. Dragon Man does fight the Fantastic Four, and the FF manage to eventually fend him off. Some highlights of their fighting are at one point Dragon Man blows his fire breath and Johnny Storm absorbs it so no innocent bystanders get flamed on. Although the fire breath was so intense for Johnny and his absorption of it that he then had to fly up into the upper atmosphere to let some of it out and cool down. After some more fighting, Sue Storm decides to try a different tact. She approaches the Dragon Man peacefully and wants to see how he responds to her kindness and sympathy. Dragon Man doesn't fight back. In fact, he begins to stroke Sue's hair. Eventually, Diablo grows frustrated that Dragon Man hasn't finished off the FF. So Diablo is about to use a freeze potion on the Fantastic Four, but Dragon Man, using his tail, causes Diablo to trip, and the freeze potion lands on the surface of a lake called Dead Man's Lake. Diablo, he falls on the icy surface of this lake, and Dragon Man leaps on top of them, and they sink underneath the icy surface. And the two of them then get swept away under the lake, never to be seen again, at least not this issue. The scientist, Gregson Gilbert, he says that he will remain here and stay vigil. Should the Dragon Man ever return, he will destroy him. Anyway, the rest of their day's events go pretty smoothly. Reed Richards gives his lecture and it is a big success. At the end of the day, Reed and Sue go for a walk on the campus. They're walking in a place called Lover's Lane. While they're walking, Reed points out a tree cut in the shape of a heart. Reed says to Sue, "According to tradition, any couple who holds hands and kisses while standing before it will marry within a year." Sue Storm to this says, "I've been waiting for you to take my hand." Reed, he says to Sue, "Sue, my dearest, you mean you feel about me the same way I feel about you?" Sue replies, "I've always felt that way, Reed. Perhaps I never fully realized it till now, but it's always been you." And with this, in a way, Reed Richards and Sue Storm are now finally engaged to be married. Fantastic Four issue 36, The Frightful Four. The Fantastic Four are holding a press conference where Reed Richards and Sue Storm announce their engagement to the world. And the press just eats it up, taking thousands of pictures. Once they tucker themselves out, the press leave. The Thing, he tries to stop them, saying, "Hold it, where are you guys running to? I ain't tired. Don't you want any pin-up pictures of lovable me?" The press do not, though. Elsewhere, we see a new super-villain team forming. They will call themselves the Frightful Four, in opposition to the Fantastic Four. Their leader is the evil genius known as the Wizard. Also on the team are a man named Trapster, as well as the Spider-Man villain, the Sandman. The Wizard, though, he wants a new female villain to join their team, to be the counter to Sue Storm, and he has just the suitable candidate. They eventually track her down and successfully recruit her. Her name is Medusa. Medusa has long, flowing red hair, and she actually has the ability to control and manipulate that hair. It is incredibly strong and can be used as a weapon. It's tougher than steel and can extend to great lengths, allowing her to perform a variety of acrobatic feats and combat maneuvers. Beyond this, Medusa also has enhanced physical abilities such as increased strength, agility, and endurance. Now, this is actually Medusa's first appearance in comics, and currently she's going to be a villain, but actually her backstory is very involved and complicated. Eventually we will learn that Medusa is actually the queen of a group called the Inhumans, and the only reason she turned to villainy now is because she suffered some sort of accident and had amnesia and forgot her past, and the Wizard took advantage of her. But in the long run, Medusa is going to be more of a good, heroic character. But for now, though, the Wizard has successfully recruited her, and she is the last member of the Frightful Four. This new villain group then begins to plot their plans to destroy the FF. Meanwhile, over at the Baxter building, the Fantastic Four are having themselves an engagement party with various members of the superhero community there to attend and wish them well. Specifically, we see various X-Men and Avengers in attendance. This engagement party is when the Frightful Four plan to strike. They land secretly nearby and wait for the party to end, and all the various people in attendance to slowly leave. They then first attack the Thing, who is sleeping after the events of the festivities. Medusa snuck in with her power, she turned out the lights, and then the other three came into the room and used various gadgets to take the Thing down. More fighting ensues. Reed and Sue are also taken down, and the two of them, plus the Thing and Alicia, are all strapped with something called anti-gravity discs. And before you know it, the four of them all start floating up into space, where they will surely die. Luckily though, Johnny Storm was not present at the Baxter building at the time, as he was working on his car at a nearby neighborhood garage a few blocks away. Johnny, he just so happens to see the Fantastic Four signal flare shoot up in the sky. Alicia Masters was able to shoot it off into the sky before her and the others were strapped to the anti-gravity discs. So Johnny Storm, he returns back to the Baxter building, and there he confronts the Frightful Four. He attacks the Wizard, and he makes the Wizard fly up in his ship to retrieve the other members of his team. There, Johnny regathers his team members, brings them into the ship, and removes their anti-gravity discs. Eventually, they make their way back down to Earth where they continue fighting the Frightful Four some more. The battle continues to ensue, and it ends when the Frightful Four's ship explodes, and in the dust and debris, the Frightful Four manage to slip away and disappear. But they will surely be ready to strike back at the Fantastic Four in a future issue. Fantastic Four issue 37, Behold, a Distant Star. Over at the Baxter building, Reed Richards is showing the Thing a new gadget he created, something called a power amplifier. It draws energy from an unknown source from somewhere beyond the confines of their solar system and converts it into raw, usable power. I'm sure it will come in handy later this issue. Later on, Sue Storm talks with Reed. She speaks of her father, Franklin Storm, that died several issues ago, killed by the Skrulls. And Sue, she believes that her father's death should not go unpunished. So she manages to talk Reed and the others to traveling to the Skrull homeworld and finding the Skrull responsible for her father's death. Elsewhere on a Skrull spaceship, we meet the very Skrull that was responsible for Franklin Storm's death and orchestrating the whole teleporting him to Earth but strapping a bomb to him thing. So the Skrull responsible is a man named Morat. Morat is currently engaged to a Princess Anel, who is princess to the king of the Skrull homeworld, who is named Dorek 7. This Morat, even though he is engaged to the Princess Anel, is not a good guy. When he speaks of how he killed Franklin Storm to his would-be bride, she replies, "Oh, it was a cruel and heartless deed. Oh, why do I love you so?" And then Morat goes hunting from his spaceship, shooting weird alien animals from above. Anel pleads with her future husband, "Morat, no, please, do not shoot that harmless game. The natives of this primitive planet use them as beasts of burden." Morat replies to her, "Silence, Anel. You are not yet my wife. None can tell Warlord Morat where to hunt or what to hunt. I do what pleases me, and it pleases me to revel in my power." Who talks like that? Anyway, the Fantastic Four, along with the help of NASA, begin flying into space. Now, the Skrull homeworld is actually very far away from Earth. But luckily, Reed Richards knows of a space-time warp they can travel through, which will spit them out near the Skrull homeworld. How convenient! Reed, when they are in the space-time warp, has to do all sorts of crazy calculations to make sure they exit at the right spot. Reed's calculations are correct, and they come out at the right location, and they arrive on the Skrull home planet. There, the Fantastic Four battling some patrolling Skrulls. The FF are holding their own, but then they get shot with some technology they were not aware of. The Skrulls hit them with something called an immobilizer ray, which zaps the FF of their powers. They then get captured and brought to a holding cell. Later on, Warlord Morat is told of the Fantastic Four's capture, and he wants to use this opportunity to further his own political goals. He says to himself, "Fate has given me the power to overthrow our weakling king. Soon the crown shall be mine. We must slay the Fantastic Four, then the entire kingdom must learn that they died at my hands, and I shall be acclaimed as this galaxy's greatest hero. 3 times before, the Earthlings have foiled our plans. Now it takes Morat to destroy them." Morat, he gets ushered to the Fantastic Four's holding cell, and he wants to have them put to death. But Reed Richards, he sprawls his body over his teammates, and he pleads with Morat. He tries to come up with a deal to offer him. Reed Richards says, "You know who I am. My scientific know-how has defeated you in the past, but now I offer you the world. Spare our lives and I'll show you how to get unlimited power." Morat is indeed intrigued by this. Elsewhere, the Skrull King, Dorek 7, is talking to his daughter, Anel. Anel tells her father of the Fantastic Four's capture on their planet. Annelle assumed that her father had been told, but her father suspects ulterior motives, as he has not been told of the Fantastic Four's capture, and he believes that this smacks of high treason. Back over to the Fantastic Four. So they have been zapped of their power by this immobilizer ray, and Reed Richards has made this deal with Marat. He shows Marat this power ray that gives power that I was mentioning earlier that he showed the thing. Reed Richards, he shows the gun off a bit and how it works, and then Marat takes it and then he shoots Reed and the Fantastic Four with it, but then rather than kill them, the Fantastic Four are then somehow given back their powers. And now that they have their powers back, they begin fighting Marat and his forces. Battling ensues, most of Marat's forces are taken down, and then all that is left is Marat. And then eventually they are joined by the King Dorak 7 and his daughter, Annelle. Marat, trying to save face, tells the king, Your Majesty, I present you with these alien prisoners whom I have captured. Guards, secure the captives. Dorak 7 replies to Marat, You lie as always, Marat. Had my personal guard not appeared, you and your men would have been defeated, and you never intended to bring the aliens to me. Annelle tries to defend her future husband by saying, Father, he is your own warlord. How can you accuse him of this? Dorak responds, Silence, Annelle. He is warlord no longer. Strip him of his insignia. Put him in chains. I brand Marat as a traitor to the realm. Marat, he will not go quietly though, and he begins to attack with what remains of his forces. So the king orders his forces to shoot Marat. But Annelle, she runs in the middle of the crossfire, trying to protect her fiancé. In the ensuing firefight, Marat gets shot and killed. Annelle too is seemingly shot, but luckily the invisible girl protected her with a invisible force field around her, so she survived. King Dorak is at first confused, but the Fantastic Four explain what happened. The king is pleased that the Fantastic Four saved his daughter, and they offer the FF a boon of him, whatever it is they may desire. Reed explains that the only boon that they want is to be given the Skrull responsible for the death of the prisoner, Franklin Storm, that they returned to Earth many months ago. For that victim of the infamous deed was Sue's father. The king to this replies, Then I am doubly pleased at this turn of events. There, Marat is the one you seek. It was him who planned the deception. Marat, the traitor. And now my debt to you is paid. With the slaying of Marat, Earth needs fear the Skrulls no longer. It was he who craved to conquer Earth. To me, you are just alien savages. You are beneath my imperial notice. Now go, while you still may. The Fantastic Four, they then travel back to Earth on a mission accomplished. And they arrive just in time for Reed and Sue's wedding rehearsal. As the rehearsal kicks off, the priest at one moment says, the rehearsal's going very well, but could we have a little bit less noise? And the Thing, who's crying immensely, says, I can't help it. These things always make me blubber. And then the Thing starts sniffing and crying and honking. Fantastic Four issue 38, defeated by the Frightful Four. The Fantastic Four in the Baxter building are having themselves a grand old time. Meanwhile, elsewhere we see the Frightful Four are beginning to concoct their next scheme to take on the Fantastic Four. We see the villain known as the Wizard flying around, thanks to his anti-grav power. When he is having his team meeting with the other members of the Frightful Four later on, they start having an argument. Sandman thinks that, maybe the Wizard shouldn't be in charge. Maybe it's time they hold themselves a little election around here, huh? But the Wizard reestablishes his dominance by showing them a demonstration of his awesome new mastery over the force of gravity. Using these anti-gravity powers, he is tossing the other members of his team around. Once Wizard has successfully reestablished himself as their leader, they begin their plan to take on the FF. The next day, when Sue Storm goes shopping for some new clothes at an exclusive East Side fashion house, Medusa, using her hair, tangles Sue Storm, tying her up. The trapster then shoots Sue with some sort of freeze gun. And then the wizard with his anti-grav powers whisks Sue away, kidnapping her. I think this is like the 6th or 7th time Sue has been kidnapped so far in this series. News of Sue Storm's abduction makes the papers. So very soon, Thing, Reed, and Johnny are figuring out how they can get Sue back. The Frightful Four in the Wizard's anti-grav ship fly across the world to a remote island where apparently underground nuclear tests had been taking place. But the island has now been abandoned. The Frightful Four, along with Sue, go underground into this bunker. The wizard explains that he had salvaged an atomic Q-bomb, which, under his scientific genius, is now one of the most potent explosive devices in the world. And when the Fantastic Four come in blundering to rescue their captive partner, his Q-bomb shall give them their final greeting. Wizard orders Sue Storm placed on the floor near the detonation mechanism. Once all that is set up, the Frightful Four leave Sue there, and they fly with their grav ship back over to New York. And they goad and lure the Fantastic Four into attacking their ship, which, sure enough, they do. The three of them have grabbed onto the ship and are trying to punch their way inside. But the Frightful Four shoot some fire blasts around the hull of the ship, and it shakes Reed and the Thing off. Johnny, though, because he can fly, continues on pursuing the ship. Johnny eventually breaks his way inside the ship, but then Sandman extinguishes Johnny's flames with tons of sand. Trapster uses his latest trap and a Bestos tape and ties Johnny up. Meanwhile, Reed and the Thing get inside the Fantastic Four pogo plane and begin flying on after the anti-grav ship. They follow that anti-grav ship all the way back to that island. Once on the island, a big battle ensues once again. Reed manages to untie Johnny Storm and free him. Meanwhile, in the underground bunker below the island, Sue Storm was knocked unconscious due to some sleeping gas, but it has now worn off, and she is slowly waking up. She is tied and bound, though. Luckily, she uses her invisible force field powers to expand and break the binding. Sue is still very weak, though, from the sleeping gas, and she's not at 100%. Sue, she overhears what she thinks are her colleagues on the surface, so she starts yelling out for them. Eventually, Reed, Thing, and Johnny fight their way past the Frightful Four and down into the bunker to aid Sue. Only this was the Frightful Four's plan all along. While the Fantastic Four went underground, they escaped on their grav ship and flew away. While they are flying away, they start celebrating, saying, "We did it! We finished off the FF! There's no way they can escape now!" Though many have tried in the past, only the evil FF could defeat the Fantastic Four. With this victory behind us, the world will know we're the most powerful band of marauders of all time. Sandman asks the wizard, "Hey Wiz, when can we expect the big blow-up?" The wizard answers, "In exactly 2 seconds, we will see the blast clearly, even from this great distance." Medusa, she chimes in saying, "It's hard to believe we really defeated them, and yet, once the blast occurs, they're finished." So, while the Fantastic Four were aiding Sue in that bunker, that Q-bomb explodes, and a giant nuclear blast engulfs the island. While the blast goes off, Sue Storm manages to protect herself and the others by forming an invisible force field around them. Buffeted by the shockwaves, dazed by the noise and the force of the impact, the Fantastic Four are knocked unconscious, although they are safe, protected by Sue, whose will to survive was so strong that her force field remains, even though she is now unconscious. And something about this nuclear blast is slowly starting to drain the Fantastic Four of their powers. So even though the Frightful Four did not succeed in killing the Fantastic Four this issue, they in many ways did win this battle. Fantastic Four issue 39, A Blind Man Shall Lead Them. The Fantastic Four are now depowered, and they managed to survive the nuclear blast from last issue, and they were just out there, floating in the ocean, until eventually they were saved by a passing ship. Later on, as the Fantastic Four are recovering on this ship and getting a ride home, they discuss amongst themselves, and they realize that all of them have lost their powers. The Thing is Ben Grimm, once again. When the Fantastic Four finally arrive in the Baxter building, their powers have still not yet returned. Reed Richards is afraid, what will their enemies do if they find out that they don't have their powers, and they can't defend themselves? So Reed, he spends the next several days building all sorts of contraptions that will kind of mimic their powers, but in a shitty kind of way. So Johnny Storm, wearing this weird kind of suit, can flame on. The Thing will just manually control a robot version of the Thing. Sue Storm will be able to create some sort of artificial built-in force field, but all of these gadgets are not really replacing the real powers they once used to have. Elsewhere, Dr. Doom is at his castle in Latveria, and he is being entertained by some sort of hypnotism artist, performing a show for Doom. Doom tells the hypnotist, "Hypnotism, bah! Can such a petty talent impress Dr. Doom, the man who defeated the Fantastic Four?" If you remember back to several issues ago in the annual number 2, Dr. Doom and Reed Richards had a battle of the mind using some weird machine of Reed's called a encephalogun. Doom was also poisoned at the time because he drank some berry juice that would allow the person of the stronger mentality to create an illusion in the brain of the other. So Reed created an illusion in Doom's mind that Doom defeated him. But that is clearly not the case, although Doom did not know this entire time. So Doom in his castle, he's having this hypnotist perform for him. The hypnotist, he tells Doom, "I shall demonstrate how easily a subject may be put under hypnosis." Huh. I do not understand. You are already under hypnosis, I can sense it. But wait, I seem to be dissolving the spell. You're coming out of it. So this hypnotist manages to remove the illusion that Doom still had in his mind. Doom, he says, "A fog seems to be lifting from my brain. Slowly, memories returning. That day, long months ago, when I battled Reed Richards. I remember now. He tricked me. I didn't defeat him. He only hypnotized me to think I did, so that I would never battle him again. Never has such indignity been heaped upon Dr. Doom. Only death can avenge this insult. The death of the Fantastic Four." Doom, he stands up in a rage. He tells the hypnotist, "And to think it took a petty charlatan like you to free me from Richard's hypnotic spell." The hypnotist tells Doom, "Sire, in your gratitude, I trust you will reward your humble servant most generously." Doom replies to the man, "Gratitude? Such weak words are not for Dr. Doom. Here is your reward." Doom then smacks the man and tells him, "Be grateful I do not put you to death for knowing how I have been tricked." Dr. Doom then immediately departs in his gyroscopic aircraft and flies to New York. Meanwhile, back in New York City, in a lonely warehouse, the Fantastic Four have asked for a meeting with their lawyer, a Matt Murdock, who we secretly know as the hero Daredevil. While this meeting with Matt Murdock is going on, the Fantastic Four are also trying to use the weird gadgets that Reed built for them to imitate their powers, and it's still not working that great. So the reason Reed Richards called this meeting with Matthew Murdock, their lawyer, is because Reed is afraid that the Fantastic Four might die without their powers, and he wants to have their affairs in order. Reed tells Murdock, "If anything should happen to us, you have our power of attorney. I want to be sure that all my scientific notes are are given to the government and that the work of our charitable foundation will be continued. Murdoch says, of course. And just at that moment, Dr. Doom begins attacking the city. Matt Murdock, he slips away and he gets into his Daredevil disguise, figuring that him as Daredevil will be more assistance to the Fantastic Four than him as Matt Murdock the lawyer right now, especially since the Fantastic Four don't have their powers. In the distance, Dr. Doom in his gyroscopic aircraft is hovering over the Baxter building. Doom has managed to take over the Fantastic Four's headquarters, and he begins using the FF's own technology and weapons against them. And Doom shoots a message into the sky saying, "The Fantastic Four shall now die by the hand of Dr. Doom." Dr. Doom has then somehow remotely hacked into the Fantasticar and is controlling it remotely. The Fantasticar almost runs them over, but thanks to the help of Daredevil, he tackles them out of the way. When that doesn't work, Doom looks through Reed Richards' lab. He finds another machine, something called a supersonic air displacer vortex machine. Using that, he fires what seems like a tornado at the building that the Fantastic Four are in, and it rips the building apart. Now, since Doom is using Reed's own machine against him, Reed knows how it works. And Reed knows that if they take these gas cylinders here in this building and throw it into the vortex tornado, it will make it dissipate, as the gas elements will combine with the tornado in a certain way. And sure enough, it works. Dr. Doom, back at the Baxter building, is a little disappointed that the vortex is destroyed. But then he wonders, why do the Fantastic Four always seem to be retreating and on the defense? Why do they not attack him? Doom thinks, if I did not know better, I'd think they possessed no superpowers with which to strike back at me. And that other one who fights with them, Daredevil, he seems to be the one who has taken the lead, but that is impossible, or is it? It must be the answer. It's the only explanation. I've been suspecting a trick. I was too cautious to realize the obvious. The Fantastic Four are powerless. Doom, he looks for more machines to try and attack the Fantastic Four with, and they manage to avoid them all. Eventually, the Fantastic Four, powerless, along with Daredevil, make their way to the Baxter building to take on a Doom, powers or not. Fantastic Four issue 40, The Battle of the Baxter building. The FF and Daredevil fight their way to the Baxter building and then begin fighting their way up it. Doom, he hits them with all sorts of gadgets of Reed Richards which he found. For example, in the lobby, Doom manages to switch on some sort of electric defense apparatus that electrifies the floors and shoots electric blasts of energy. Although the blast seems to shoot in a certain pattern and Reed knows the pattern, so he helps everyone avoid it safely. Meanwhile, Daredevil has already made his way upstairs to where Dr. Doom is. He attempts to attack Doom, but Doom fires a miniature rocket ship at Daredevil, and Daredevil, only thanks to his heightened senses, is able to avoid it. The Fantastic Four, meanwhile, manage to get into the elevator and are on their way upstairs. But Doom, he realizes this, and with the press of a button, he can destroy the entire elevator car and everyone in it. So Doom, he presses the button. The Fantastic Four in the elevator, it begins to shake. Reed, he says, Doom pressed the emergency defense button. We've got exactly 2 seconds to get out. The FF pry the door open and they escape just in the nick of time. Daredevil and Dr. Doom continue battling, and the Fantastic Four eventually reach the lab where they all are. And then finally, Reed Richards grabs a machine that will give the Fantastic Four back their powers. If you remember back in issue 37, when the Fantastic Four went to the Skrull homeworld, the Fantastic Four were zapped of their powers temporarily then as well. But Reed Richards had some sort of machine called a power amplifier, and he was able to use that to give them back their powers. Well, now, using that same machine that was in the Baxter building headquarters, he uses it to start giving the powers back to the other members on his team. He gives himself powers back first, and then Sue, and then Johnny. Reed, Sue, and Johnny, now powered up once again, join Daredevil in his fight on Doom. The battle goes on for a while. Eventually, Doom triggers some sort of freeze trap on the ground that freezes everyone temporarily in place for a few moments. While they are all frozen, he retreats to another part of the building. As Doom is going, he thinks to himself, they've won this round, but by the time they realize what has happened, I'll have destroyed this building, this block, and the entire city. So Doom departs to another section of the Baxter building, and the Fantastic Four, along with Daredevil, regroup. Now, Ben Grimm, the Thing, is the only one that hasn't been given back his powers yet. Sue Storm tells Reed, you still have to bathe Ben in the rays of the stimulator. Reed says that he will. Now, Ben Grimm, still in his human appearance, he asks Reed, hey Stretcho, if that gizmo of yours can bring our powers back, why didn't you use it on us before, instead of wasting time with those nutty substitute gadgets of yours? Which is a damn fine question, because Reed, he built substitute arms, a substitute suit for Johnny, a substitute suit for Sue, as well as a robot for the Thing to control. Reed, he answers Ben, saying, the stimulator's energy had been all but drained on the Skrull planet. It needed another few days of recharging. Those substitute devices were merely a stopgap measure in case of extreme emergency. That is some pretty bad writing right there, that the Fantastic Four did not have their powers and they were desperate to have their powers back, and Reed Richards apparently had a machine that could give them their powers back, but it would just take a few days to recharge. That's fine, but he never told that to the rest of the team. Why wouldn't he tell them? Anyway, Reed is ready to shoot Ben with the gizmo and give him his powers back and turn him into the Thing once again, as Dr. Doom must be stopped, and the rest of the Fantastic Four along with Daredevil are too weak, so only the Thing can do it. Reed says, now hold still, Ben. This is the last energy burst left. I don't want to miss. Ben Grimm responds, but maybe you don't want to be the Thing again. I'm finally normal, like anyone else. Reed to this says, you've no choice, old friend. With Doom still at large, we need all our fighting strength. There's too much at stake. So Reed shoots Ben with the power amplifier device, and Ben Grimm turns back into the Thing. Sue Storm comments, poor Ben, it seems so cruel. Reed responds, I know, Sue, but it's the only way. He may hate me for this forever after, but the world needs his strength at this moment. The fate of mankind may hang in the balance. For better or for worse, the Thing must live again. Dr. Doom, in another part of the Baxter building, has found some sort of deadly weapon of Reed's, and with it, Doom creates a time bomb which will destroy everything in sight. All Doom has to do now is get himself safely out of range. But that is when the Thing, now powered up, goes to take on Doom. The Thing confronting Doom says, it's because of you that I'm the Thing again. You're gonna pay for that, do you hear? I'm gonna demolish you. Doom rejoices in the Thing attacking him, saying, at last, the brainless blabbering Thing. I've been waiting for you. The Thing then feeds Doom a massive punch, and the Thing is shocked. It seems like Doom is unaffected by it. The Thing questions, you're still standing? Doom explains, my armor's force field can generate 100,000 megavolts of pure energy. The miracle is that you have not destroyed yourself. The Thing continues trying to attack Doom. Doom, he then hits the Thing though with something called an instant hypnotism impulsor, which makes the Thing lose his sense of balance, falling to the floor. Once Thing is lying on the ground, Doom pulls out another weird gadget called a miniature sensitizer. He places it on the Thing's back and explains that this device, when he places it on the Thing's back, uses nuclear energy to increase the force of gravity, pinning the Thing to the ground. Dr. Doom underestimated the Thing's brute strength though. Even with this device placed on his back, the Thing is still able to force himself to get up and to continue making his way towards Doom. Doom is shocked. He says, "No, it can't be." The Thing, he tells Doom, "The only way you'll stop me is by killing me." Doom then pulls out another crazy gadget, something that fires intensified molecules. When the molecules hit the Thing and are exposed to air, their mass increases until they attain the size and strength of giant boulders. Boulders that will keep slamming into the Thing until his massive body is beaten and stilled. So the Thing is hit with these molecules that are forming boulders around him, and he gets trapped in the rock of them, but he still manages to fight his way through. The Thing shouts, "No blasted overgrown stones are gonna save you, Doom." Shit. Doom is like using all of the arsenals of his gadgets to try to take the Thing down, but nothing's working. Doom hits the Thing again with the 100,000 megavolts of pure energy. The Thing gets jolted back. But the Thing, he still keeps going. He's crawling towards Doom. Doom says the Thing, and still, you feebly attempt to crawl back for more punishment? Very well, then you shall get it. Doom, he fires another energy blast at the Thing, but the Thing keeps going. Doom fires another energy blast at the Thing, but the Thing keeps going. Doom, he's dumbfounded. He says, "No, it's impossible. You can't keep coming. Not against the force of my nerve-shattering energy blasts." The Thing, he says, "Mister, maybe I'm just too dumb to collapse, too ugly to die. I'll let you figure out the reasons. As for me, I finally got my paws on ya, and nothing's gonna save you now." The Thing, finally grabbing on to Doom's hands, crushes all of the different mechanical, electrical weapons inside the suit. The Thing, he just rips them out, and then he wants to beat Doom to death. But that is when finally the rest of the Fantastic Four arrive, and they tell the Thing, "No, Ben, stop. You'll kill him. Ben, listen to me. We want to end this threat, but we're not murderers." The Thing responds, "Yeah, maybe you're right for a change. Without his built-in gizmos, he ain't worth worrying about." Doom, utterly defeated, begins to walk away. Reed Richards explains, "And remember, he's still the ruler of Latveria, and as such, he has diplomatic immunity. But by defeating him so conclusively, you've broken his pride. It's the worst defeat he could have suffered." The Thing asks, "Big deal. And where were you while we were waltzing around?" Sue answers, "We treated Daredevil's wounds and helped him leave. And then we watched your fight, but Reed felt you wouldn't want us to interfere." Dr. Doom is slowly walking away while this conversation continues. Reed says, "I was worried about you once or twice, Ben. I almost stepped in, but now I'm glad I didn't. By beating him decisively, using only raw strength, you shattered his ego, Ben. He may never gain enough confidence to attack us again." Sue, hugging Reed, says, "Reed, darling, we're back to normal again. We have each other once more." The Thing, a little bummed, says, "Yeah, you got each other, but you ain't got me. Not anymore. I'm through being the fall guy for this combo. You divvy up the glamour, but me, I'm still the Thing. I got the short end of the stick on this whole deal. You can get married, but not me. You can be normal, but not me. Well, I've had it. I'm through." And with the Thing walking off, we end this volume of the Fantastic Four. Alright, so that was volume 4. Let me go through my thoughts on this one. I really loved the Doctor Doom annual issue where we learned Doom's origin, and we saw him growing up as a little kid, and we met his father. You saw their life in Latveria, Doom then going to America, then coming back to Latveria and becoming their ruler. I would have liked some more fleshing out of how exactly Doom made himself the ruler of Latveria. Although I guess I could use my imagination and figure out how Doom would have been able to manipulate that. But I would have liked to see that a little bit more. And then we had a Doom and Fantastic Four confrontation issue, and it was pretty exciting, I thought. Then we had the Mole Man issue, and whatever to the Mole Man stuff. But we were introduced to Franklin Storm, and while some of the Franklin Storm stuff in here was pretty convoluted with the Skrulls manipulating Franklin and whatnot, but in the end, we ended on a pretty big moment where Franklin sacrifices himself to save the others, and he dies here. So the death of Johnny and Sue's dad is a pretty big moment. We had the Namor Civil War issue, which was great. Although, there was a few issues where we've established that Namor is on the outs with the Atlanteans, and then now all of a sudden he's back in their good graces. And I didn't like how that wasn't really fleshed out in how exactly Namor is back in their good graces. But still, it was a pretty sick storyline where there's a civil war going on with this other guy, and the Fantastic Four help Namor win the war without Namor even knowing. Pretty fun stuff. We had the issue where the Fantastic Four go to this college campus and they meet this Dragon Man. And honestly, most of that stuff is pretty bad. But we did get Reed Richards proposing to Sue, and now they are engaged. So it was really great to at least see that moment there. We were then introduced to the Frightful Four and the first appearance of the Inhuman Medusa. So that was cool. And their first battle with the Frightful Four was pretty exciting. And then we had the Skrull issue, which I thought was really cool sci-fi stuff. With the FF going to the Skrull homeworld, I liked seeing some of the politics going on in the Skrull homeworld, and this evil guy, and then the king and the princess, and all in all, I thought it was a pretty dope issue. Then the Frightful Four come back again, and this time they, in a way, beat the Fantastic Four and blow up a nuclear bomb or a Q-bomb or whatever they called it in the issue here, and that's pretty dope that the bad guys were able to kind of get one up on over the Fantastic Four. You rarely see the villains in a way kind of win, so that was pretty exciting. Now the Fantastic Four then lose their powers, which is becoming kind of a crutch. There's sometimes their powers are just like taken away from them and then given back to them later. And it was kind of some bad writing with some of that in here, but it was still fun having them team up with Daredevil, and then having them not have their powers, having to go up against Dr. Doom. And I thought the ending of issue 40 here was really cool, how the Thing was battling Doom, and the Thing, he just kept pushing onward. And we really saw how tough Doom was to beat, because Doom, he's just pulling all these gadgets out of his ass, man. He's just hitting Thing with so much stuff, but the Thing just keeps going, and he eventually kind of overcomes and beats Doom. Of course, he can't kill Doom or arrest Doom because they're not murderers, and Doom has diplomatic immunity, so Doom is just going to be allowed to keep doing whatever he wants. But still, pretty badass issue there. Although, it was kind of funny how when the Thing was Ben Grimm, he's in this human form, and he doesn't know if he wants to be turned back into the Thing, and Reed kind of makes the decision for the Thing and turns him back. But I guess you could argue that Reed had to do that, because if the Thing didn't go and fight Doom, then Doom would have blown up this bomb thing, and it would have blown up a lot of New York City, I would have assumed. So yeah, I guess the Thing had to do it, but kind of funny how Reed forced it on the Thing. But it led to a really badass fight scene between Thing and Doom. And at the end of this volume here, the Thing is really resentful once again, and he kind of leaves the Fantastic Four, so we'll see how that plays out in future issues. So all in all, I thought this volume was a step up from some of the past volumes, and I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Pretty cool stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll be back in the future with Volume 5, where we are going to get Galactus and the Silver Surfer. So those are some monumental issues in the next volume.